Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The word he used wasn't shouted. He didn't slam his fist, didn't curse. He said it quietly, over roasted chicken and green beans, the way someone might comment on the weather. Weak. That was it. One syllable, dropped like a stone into a still pond, sending ripples that no one at the table knew how to stop. Lena looked up slowly from her plate. Across the table, her husband David didn't even meet her eyes. He was cutting into his chicken, speaking to their 13-year-old daughter like nothing had happened. "Your mother just isn't built for pressure," he added, smiling faintly. "Some people aren't." Mira blinked between them, fork frozen midair. Noah, their younger one, looked down at his plate like maybe if he stayed quiet enough, he could disappear. Lena's throat tightened. She reached for her water glass, not because she was thirsty, but because she needed something to do with her hands, something to hold on to. This wasn't new. David had always had a way of weaponizing calm. He didn't yell. He didn't insult outright. He made statements, cold, casual judgments masked as observations, delivered with a slight chuckle. So if she reacted, it looked like she was the one being sensitive. But tonight was different. Tonight, he said it in front of the kids. That was the shift, not the word. She'd heard worse behind closed doors. But the performance of it, the delivery at the table, with their children as witnesses, that was new, that was deliberate. She set her glass down slowly. "Excuse me?" David finally looked at her, feigning surprise. "What? I'm just saying, some people handle stress differently. You shut down. It's not your fault." It was the kind of sentence that sounded logical if you didn't know him. If you hadn't lived inside the slow erosion of being married to someone who studied your weaknesses, not to help, but to catalog. Lena said nothing more. She finished her meal in silence. Mira poked at her food. Noah asked to be excused early. David kept talking. Sports. Something about work. The latest thing their neighbor was doing wrong with the hedges. He was always fine after slicing someone. After dinner, she washed the dishes alone. Not because anyone asked her to, but because the weight in her chest had settled. And doing something, anything, was better than going upstairs and lying next to the man who called her weak. She scrubbed harder than she needed to. The sink was already clean. By the time the kitchen was spotless, the kids had gone upstairs, and David was in the living room, feet up, flipping through his phone. She stood in the doorway, watching him. He looked so normal there, so utterly average. You could take a photo of him in that moment, and nobody would see anything sinister. That was the point. David didn't hurt with fists. He hurt with tone, with indifference, with how he could make you question your memory by simply smiling through it. She walked past him without a word. Up the stairs, down the hallway. In her room, she opened the drawer where she kept her charger, plugged in her phone, and sat on the edge of the bed. Then she opened the folder. She'd started collecting them months ago. Screenshots, texts. Not because she had planned anything, just because some quiet part of her had stopped believing his words and started trusting her own instincts again. There was the message from Chloe, sent at 11:42 p.m. last May. "You're still up? Couldn't stop thinking about how you looked in that blue shirt today." David had said it was a client. There was the one from T, No name, just a letter, with a selfie that made Lena's stomach turn. Sent while he was at a conference. He had explanations for all of it. They weren't what they looked like. She was overreacting. Everyone flirted. It didn't mean anything. And maybe if she were the only one affected, she might have buried it again. But tonight, he called her weak. In front of their children. That wasn't about a text. That wasn't about a misunderstanding. That was about control. Lena opened her notes app and started typing. Not a rant, not a confession, just bullet points. Timestamps. A quiet record of what had happened and when. The things he said, the way the kids looked. Not for revenge, for clarity. She needed to see it laid out. The reality. No more gaslight shadows. Her heart didn't race. It slowed. She knew what she was going to do. And for once, the tears didn't come. She didn't sleep that night. Not in the real sense. She laid down after midnight, but the darkness was full of flickering thoughts, each one lit by memory. Not the kind of memory you treasure. These were the quiet humiliations. The smirks when she forgot something. The heavy sighs when she tried to express how tired she felt. The way David always waited until the kids were just within earshot to make his most cutting remarks, and then claimed she was overreacting when her voice trembled. Lena stared at the ceiling and breathed through it. She had learned, over time, how to lie still, how to quiet her body, even when her mind was screaming. At 3:10 a.m., she slipped out of bed. David hadn't stirred. She padded downstairs, careful on the creaky fourth step, and sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open and her phone beside it. She opened the folder again, the one she'd kept hidden inside a decoy app. The texts were still there, all of them. The late-night messages, the suggestive ones, the ones that hinted at more than flirtation, and the one from just last week, the one that had frozen her mid-stir while making spaghetti for the kids. She doesn't suspect a thing. She never does. Lena hadn't shown it. She had finished dinner, set the table, laughed when Noah told her a joke he'd half forgotten halfway through. She had lived beside the betrayal like it was wallpaper. But last night had changed the tone. David didn't just betray her privately. He had tried to humiliate her publicly, to their children who had never heard her shout, who had never seen her fall apart, who had always looked to her as the one who held things together. She wasn't about to let him rewrite the story of who she was. Not anymore. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad as she crafted an email to herself, attaching the files, backing up the screenshots, saving the truth in multiple places. Not because she needed it forever, just in case, just until morning. The plan formed slowly, without rage, just clarity. She wouldn't scream, wouldn't throw things or break down. That wasn't her. And besides, children didn't remember tantrums as truth. They remembered stillness. They remembered calm. They remembered facts. At 5:22 a.m., she set her phone on the charger and began making breakfast. French toast, orange juice, blueberries rinsed and set in a bowl just the way Mira liked. The normal things. That's what made it powerful. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a conversation. A quiet one. A true one. By 6:45, Mira wandered down, rubbing her eyes and muttering about a test she forgot to study for. Noah followed, dragging his feet, his hair pointing in 5 directions. They sat at the table like always, a morning like any other. except Lena's phone sat face up next to her plate, screen dark, but ready. David came down a few minutes later, kissed Mira's head, said good morning like nothing had happened the night before. He poured himself coffee, scrolled briefly through his phone, and complimented the smell of the cinnamon. Lena smiled slightly, kept flipping the last slice of French toast in the pan. When everyone had a plate and the clatter of forks began, she sat down slowly and waited. "Can I say something?" she asked, not raising her voice. David barely looked up. "Sure." She looked at the kids, Mira, alert now, Noah, chewing slower. "I want to talk about last night." David gave a soft chuckle. "Let's not ruin breakfast, hmm?" But she was already unlocking her phone. "No," she said. "Let's not pretend it didn't happen." She turned the phone around and set it on the table, screen glowing. A message thread was open. Mira looked down first, then Noah. Silence. David's jaw tightened, just slightly. "Lena," he said. But she held up a hand. Not angrily, just steady. "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying this because what you said about me last night, that wasn't true. And I won't let our kids believe it." The kids looked between them, unsure. So she spoke directly to them. "I want you to know something. Being calm doesn't mean being weak. Walking away from someone who tries to hurt you doesn't make you a failure, and pretending everything's fine just to keep the peace, that's not strength. That's survival." Mira blinked hard. Noah set his fork down. David stood now. "This isn't appropriate." But Lena didn't flinch. "You made a comment last night in front of them, and I stayed quiet. But this morning they deserve the truth." She didn't need to say more. The messages spoke for themselves. David's words, David's choices, David's mask. There was no yelling, no accusations. Just one woman sitting at a breakfast table telling her children that silence no longer served them. David stood still, watching the screen, then her, and for once he had nothing to say. The room was so quiet you could hear the tick of the kitchen clock. Mira finally spoke. "Did you really send those, Dad?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was small, wounded, like she was trying to reshape the father she thought she knew into someone who couldn't have done what she'd just seen. David didn't answer right away. His hand hovered near the back of the chair he had pushed away from, like he was considering sitting down again, but couldn't quite find the courage to. "Those are private messages," he said at last. His voice was low, tight. Lena tilted her head calmly. "So, is calling your wife weak in front of your children? But here we are." He met her eyes then, and for the first time in years, there was no smugness in his stare. Just something close to panic, muted, controlled, but visible. The unraveling had begun, and he knew it. Noah looked down again, chewing on his lip. Lena turned back to the kids. "I didn't show you this to make you hate your father. I showed you because last night he tried to turn your image of me into something smaller. And I won't allow that. Not in this house." She reached for the phone and turned it off. She didn't need to push it further. The damage wasn't in the details. It was in the fact that he lied, and now they knew. David stepped toward her. "You've embarrassed me in front of our kids. What good does that do?" She raised her eyebrows slightly. "No, you did that. The moment you decided they were old enough to watch you tear me down for sport." He opened his mouth to reply, but there was nothing useful left to say. The air was full of the truth now. It had filled the corners of the kitchen, the space between them, the space between him and the two people who had once called him hero without hesitation. David's phone buzzed on the counter. He ignored it. "I didn't mean it like that," he said to Mira. "Quieter now. Your mom and we've been going through a lot. I've been stressed." Lena stood up slowly. She didn't need to argue. Mira crossed her arms. "So that makes it okay to say she's weak?" David swallowed. "No, I lost my temper." "Funny," Mira replied. "You didn't look angry. You looked proud of it." Lena's chest tightened, not from sadness, but from something close to relief. Her daughter had seen it, really seen it. Noah pushed his plate away and got up, quietly. He walked around the table and hugged Lena from the side, pressing his face into her arm. She ran a hand through his hair, the way she had since he was little. David looked at all of them, then slowly backed away from the table. He picked up his coffee, now cold, and held it like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "I think I'll go for a drive," he said. Lena nodded once. "Take your time." He didn't look back as he left. The front door closed with a soft, final click. When the sound had faded, Lena turned back to the kids. "You can ask me anything," she said. "Anything you need to know. I'll answer honestly." Mira nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "I just didn't know he talked to other people like that." Lena reached across the table and took her hand. "I didn't want you to grow up thinking it was normal, or thinking I accepted it because I thought I deserved it." They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Mira whispered, "You're not weak." Lena felt her throat catch, but not from pain. From validation, from the knowledge that truth had done what years of quiet suffering never could. "I know," she whispered back, "but thank you for saying it." Noah climbed into her lap. He hadn't done that in over a year. Too old, too big. But now, he just wanted to be held. She wrapped her arms around him and leaned back slightly in the chair, anchoring them both. Outside, the day was starting like any other. Cars passing, dogs barking in backyards. Nothing dramatic. But in that kitchen, everything had shifted. They wouldn't unsee what they saw. They wouldn't forget what truth sounded like. And Lena, she wasn't afraid of what came next, because she had just taught her children that silence is not love, and being calm doesn't mean you don't fight back. Sometimes, it means you choose the right moment to finally speak. David didn't come home that night. He texted around 9 p.m., a short message to say he was staying at a hotel near his office and needed space. Lena read it once, then locked her phone and set it face down on the nightstand. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to explain. Upstairs, the kids had already gone to bed. Mira had spent most of the evening curled up on the couch with her earbuds in, headphones shielding her from the sound of the quiet. Noah had drawn pictures at the kitchen table. He didn't show them to Lena, but he didn't need to. She recognized what silence looked like in a child. She'd once been that child herself. Lena brushed her teeth slowly, taking her time with each step of her routine. She had spent years moving quietly around David's moods, adjusting her volume, her phrasing, her opinions. It was strange to realize she didn't have to do that now. Not tonight, maybe not ever again. When she slipped into bed, the sheets were cool. She left the other side untouched. In the dark, she replayed moments from earlier that morning. Mira's steady gaze, the way Noah had reached for her hand, the phone sitting quietly between them, no longer a threat, but a witness. She hadn't set out to expose David. That was never the plan. But something in her had shifted when he called her weak. The word itself was almost laughable. After everything she'd carried, everything she'd hidden, everything she'd endured for the sake of keeping the peace. If that was weakness, then what did strength even look like? The truth was, she hadn't felt weak, not for a long time. She had just been scared of what would happen if she told the truth too loudly. But now her children had heard it. They had seen it. And once the truth is spoken, it can't be undone. The next morning, David was still gone. No calls, no updates. Lena made pancakes, knowing full well he hated the smell of syrup in the house. She flipped each one slowly, filling the kitchen with warmth and sugar and something that felt strangely like peace. Mira came down first, still in her oversized hoodie. She poured orange juice without being asked and set 2 extra plates on the table. Just 2. Noah followed soon after, rubbing his eyes. "Is Dad coming back today?" he asked softly. "I don't know," Lena replied. She didn't say it with bitterness, just honesty. "Are you mad at him?" he asked. She thought about it. "No," she said. "I'm just done making excuses for him." Mira looked up from her plate. "He should apologize." Lena smiled faintly. "That's up to him." They ate together, quietly, but not uncomfortably. It was the kind of silence that felt shared, not imposed. Later that day, David returned. He didn't announce himself, just walked through the door with the same key he always used and placed his overnight bag by the staircase. His eyes met Lena's for a second, and then flicked away. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he walked to the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, hands folded, like a man preparing for a sentence he hadn't written. "I never thought you'd do that," he finally said, in front of them. Lena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, not defensive, just steady. "I never thought you would either." David nodded slowly, as if agreeing to a point he hadn't considered. "They look at me differently now," he said. "They should," she replied. He didn't respond. "What did you expect, David?" she asked gently. "That they'd keep believing the version of you created for them? That I'd keep covering for you, no matter what you said or did?" He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I didn't realize how much they were watching." "They always were," she said. He looked older in that moment, smaller somehow. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," she said, "but you did anyway. And now they know who we are, not just who we pretended to be." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't the old silence. The one filled with fear, with performance, with careful omissions. This one was clean, honest. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "I don't want you to do anything," she said. "I want you to understand what you did. That's all." David looked down. "I need to think," he muttered. "Take your time," Lena said, and with that, she turned and walked away. She didn't need to fight. She didn't need to win. The battle had never been about power. It had always been about clarity. And now, finally, her children saw her clearly. That was enough. The house didn't change overnight. There were still dishes to wash, school drop-offs, emails to reply to, but something beneath it all had shifted, something quiet and firm. Lena no longer measured her worth against David's moods. She didn't need to justify her choices or explain why she finally stopped shielding her children from the truth. She simply moved forward. She began journaling again. Little notes, moments, gratitudes, not the big things, but the small victories. the breath she didn't hold, the moment Mira rested her head on her shoulder again, the way Noah started helping with dinner without being asked. Truth had broken something open, but not in destruction, in release. There was space now, space for healing, for questions, for growth. David remained distant, not angry, not defensive, just quieter than before, as if he, too, was beginning to feel the weight of all the things he hadn't said, or worse, the things he had. Lena didn't hate him, but she didn't excuse him either. Some bridges weren't meant to be burned, but they didn't have to be crossed again either. And as the days turned into weeks, and the silence in their home turned from brittle to breathable, she knew. She had done the hardest thing. She had broken the story before it broke her. She had let the truth speak where fear had once been. And her children, they would never again confuse cruelty with strength.